Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Real Talk podcast, where we just talk about life and faith and honestly anything that comes to our mind, right? James here and John with me, and we want to talk about something that probably I believe it applies to every single person watching this, because every single person watching this has just gone through and is going through a global pandemic. And so we were talking about this the other day, even like pastoring people through this moment. And I feel like one of the things that we feel like is coming up in our own lives, and probably like in your life, is everything has changed, right? And we can't quite like pinpoint like kind of what happened, but everything has changed. But we're still all trying to live in like 2018. We talk about that a lot. We have rhythms that were formed in 2018, but we're not in 2018. We are in the year 2022, post-pandemic. And so we just want to talk about maybe like from our own lives, just how have you changed rhythms, or how have you had to change rhythms through this moment to stay connected to God and to family and all those different things? And let's just talk, man. This is a totally semi-unscripted moment.
Yeah. We just want to get on here and say some stuff, basically. The question, I don't know where we heard it from, but it was like this idea of getting your life back into orbit. How do we do that? And so we're just gonna like kind of rattle off some thoughts and things. Probably more from our personal life, that's we're trying to use. One thing for me has been, I have rediscovered the importance of having a really disciplined routine, and I'm not the most probably disciplined person naturally, and I don't know why. I've just had this thought multiple times. You're like, man, discipline and a routine and a schedule feels really good right now. It just feels good. I feel like it makes me the man and the person that I want to be. I feel like when I wake up, whether it's going into work or a day off or something, if I don't have a clear sense as to kind of what I should be doing today exactly, or if I'm trying to think of too many things, it goes really badly for me. And so I have kind of rebuilt my schedule. It's actually somewhat similar to my schedule before, I would say, but it's a little bit updated. But it's just I'm getting back into rhythm, because obviously with like COVID and church and closing and reopening, and the world's different, and it's like for some reason like COVID has made everything go haywire, every political issue, everything that could go wrong, and now it's like we just had the hottest day in the history of like Houston in July, like 2 days ago. It's just like everything is like going haywire. And so, but one of the things I've been gripped by is this idea that the chaos around you doesn't have to create chaos within you. And so for me, a disciplined rhythm, it just feels so good right now. And then I share that rhythm with other people who I walk in connection with, so they kind of know what's going on in my life. And so anyway, that's been like a life-giving thing for me, of like, get a rhythm, stick to a rhythm. And I think a disciplined rhythm has never been more important than it is right now. And so I think that if I'm talking to somebody, I don't know how you're going to thrive in this moment without having a disciplined routine. But what about you, man?
I'm kind of coming at it maybe from the opposite angle, where I'm like more of a disciplined person, like naturally, that's just my disposition. But my problem is a little bit different than yours, where like I've always been a disciplined person, but I'm also like stubborn in my discipline. And so like I built disciplines a long time ago where, I'm to work 30 minutes earlier, and I'm going to have my quiet time then. But the problem is like those rhythms aren't working anymore, and so I'm like frustrated with myself because I'm not able to uphold these rhythms that I built before I had 2 kids. And as many of you know, I just had my second son, Oliver. And actually I was thinking about like, he will probably watch this like 20 years from now. You think about that? It'll be Internet Archives, like the Wayback Machine or whatever. And it's like me and you here in 2022. But anyway, like I just had a second son. And so it's like, I need to build new rhythms around this new season, and I think all of us probably, we would do well to evaluate kind of the things that were working before that aren't working now, and just like changing those things. And so for instance, when it comes to quiet time, like for me, I used to get up early and like, get into work a little bit early, but I can't really do that because we've got 2 kids now, a little bit harder to get out the door. And so now it's like my lunchtime is like that consistent space that I have, because I have control over that in my life. I don't have control over mornings and evenings. So that's like kind of my new rhythm.
I like that, man. That's good. Well, that's my thing too, is I think it's like kind of having a rhythm, but knowing it's going to be different than it used to be. It's probably easy for me. My rhythm actually probably is different. I didn't probably actually keep it back in the day, so mine probably actually does feel different to me. Another thing I've been doing is like this whole thing is a mind battle, and I'm trying to retrain my mind to view the past as a means by which I can express gratitude and not use it as a thing I'm trying to get back to. Once I was preaching a sermon and I had this thought that the past has a purpose, but the problem is most people never stop and think deeply or biblically about what is the point of that. And so, if you just think I have this thing that's my past and I'm going to use it to be bitter, or angry, or envious, or, upset or disillusioned, then, you can use your past for that. But I don't think biblically that's why the past exists, or why it's not even a given that we would be able to remember the past. Like, God gave us that ability. And so in Scripture, what you clearly see is the past is a means by which we can express gratitude and thankfulness for what God has done, moving forward. And so for me, I've been trying to see the past as like practicing gratitude, and like when I miss something in my life, because my life is 100% different than it used to be. Like, my life has been turned upside down. My life is very hard right now in a lot of ways. Is to look back at what was from a perspective of like, thank you, God, for that. That was awesome. And you were faithful then, so you're going to be faithful in the future, even if I don't understand it. And so whenever I feel that, I'm trying to retrain my mind, because for some reason it so quickly goes to like, dang, look what it used to be like, or dang, look at how good that used to be, or what that was like, or man. And I'm trying to train myself, and it's like any kind of discipline. At first, you're kind of forcing it, but eventually it will become, I believe, it will be the natural way that my mind works. When I think about something in the past that was good, I will praise God for it, and not be like, sad or mad that something isn't like it used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. No, man, I could probably preach a whole sermon on nostalgia and just like that, how destructive it is, like, to your heart and to your soul, and probably even to your relationships.
It's like subtitle, like, it wasn't as good as you remember.
Right.
It's like, it wasn't that good.
But I was thinking about that, man, nostalgia, and whether it's like a season of your life that is over, or whether it's a world that seemed to be more together than it is now, whatever it is, nostalgia assumes that the best is behind. And we always say, like, the best is yet to come. And that's hope, and that's the gospel. And so to position yourself in a mindset to where, like, man, God has better in front of me than he had behind me, like that's definitely a faith move. So I would say, even in this moment, for anyone who might be struggling with that, or thinking about, the past, and just like really mourning, the past, I would say two things. One, it's like, align yourself with the goodness of God, and remember, like, his faithfulness is eternal, the same yesterday, today, and forever. So you're kind of rooting yourself not on a moment that is past, in which logically you will never get back to, like, you just can't, like, just mourn that moment. But then two, I think we can position ourselves in this new moment to kind of like a wind, like setting up a sail for the winds, and it's like, how do we position ourselves to, like, glorify God and love him in this moment? It's like, what opportunities did pandemic create that now we can serve the Lord out of those opportunities? You know?
And there's a lot of them. And and it's funny, we talk about like today, it's like, oh, political polarization is so bad, but what's interesting is I went back, sometimes I listen to like our old podcast, speaking of nostalgia, I'm like, man, well, like, I almost to bring me back to that world,
Yep.
But it was interesting. What was interesting is we did a podcast on political polarization back in like 2016. But and so it's like that was happening then, and we noticed it, and we didn't like it, and so it's not like this, like some random new thing or whatever. But another thing, and I want to get your thoughts on this, man, because I was thinking about this, and this might be like the deepest hitting thing I think of this whole podcast is one of the things I write down here is call out your coping. And I know what coping is. I've become more familiar with that concept, and I probably heard podcasts on it or something, but for some reason that's been more at the front of my mind of like, we're all kind of coping in different ways. And I've noticed it even more profoundly with kind of walk with my wife through her diagnosis. Like we cope in different ways. And I think it's important to call out your coping, because if you don't, you get into these really deep pits, and it gets real hard to get out of it. And so like one for me, and this was before all that happened, even when the pandemic started, like I started eating like really late at night, like a lot of food. It was weird. And delicious, but not good.
The spicy Cheez-Its. Yes,
and a lot of other things. That's just where I started. It's like it gets worse, and I get like the sweet. It's just really bad. But so for me, I'm learning like I need to call out my coping, because you start adding those things on your life, and it just gets real wonky. Another one for me is like I'm like a vision-minded person, and so I've noticed I've been daydreaming a lot more the past 6 months to a year. And I can say, well, I'm a future vision-minded person of what could be, but when I really sit down and think about it, that's not what it is. I'm coping. I'm escaping reality. Is what I'm escaping my reality, by daydreaming about what could be. And I think there's a difference between coping and relaxing, and the essence of it is, what is your motivation? It's one thing to be exhausted, so I'm going to rest and maybe veg on my phone or something, and that's not necessarily wrong. But when it's more of like, I don't like how I feel, so I'm going to do this thing really quick, whether it's eat something or watch something or, think about something that takes me somewhere else, that's coping. And so for me, I want to call out my coping, and I'm beginning to do that and to find victory in it. But I was going to ask you, for you, I mean, what are the ways that you cope, and maybe specifically if you can think of any ways that have been uniquely, like maybe like they're new during this whole past couple of years, or you've seen it ramp up during this past couple of years, because everyone's different.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking how coping probably there's a spectrum. Some that it's like seems more benign, but then also obviously you can cope with sin and alcohol or porn or whatever it is, these things that take you to a different place or numb you to reality or whatever. I think for me, and it is like based off your wiring, I think for me it's been like I've noticed that I've tried to hold on more to like control in different aspects, whether that's at work, and maybe being frustrated because something doesn't turn out the way I want it to, or even at home with like finances and budgeting. I've noticed I'm running to these places in which I feel like I have control. It's like I can, I'm a saver, so I can transfer money over to savings, and I feel good. That's like a hit for me, like a coping kind of hit. But it's not, And we were talking about this the other day, man. Talk about preach. It's like what we say, like hope don't cope,
Yeah, I was
and so like there is a difference there. Coping is like escaping from reality. Yeah. It's numbing your mind. Hoping is. It's almost like running to reality, that God is good and better than this moment, or better than I feel in this moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's so good. Another thing I was thinking too was, I told Britton this actually. I've actually shared this story with like a lot of people, and so it's a really kind of a stupid thing, but for some reason I'm like, oh, that means it's very meaningful to me for some reason. So I feel overwhelmed a lot right now in these times with everything I have to do, and if I stopped for a moment and thought about, like I do this thing where I make like a big to-do list and like a moleskin journal that I have, and I write down like all of my work stuff and all the different people that I work with and all the things that this person needs to do. I write down like a home list and all these kinds of things. And what the downside of writing that down every week is I realize that I'm just like switching the same stuff over. I'm getting so little of this stuff done, actually. I'm like, this is, and so I'm like, am I going to write down, my van currently is out of inspection by like 7 months. Now, part of that's because, everything went down last December in my own life, but I still haven't got my inspection done. And it keeps getting on the list and transferred over. And so all these things, and one of the things also is I need to seal my deck. So I had some friends through all this that built us a new deck, which is very nice, but I need to seal it. And I've been meaning to do it forever. And last Monday on my Sabbath, I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this thing out. I'm going to get my deck sealed or whatever. And I started thinking about all the steps that took to make that happen. And I got overwhelmed, and then I was like avoiding doing any of it because it was just too much. And so, but this thought came to my mind because I've been thinking like the 5-year plan is done, forget that. It's all about the 1-year plan now. Like what are we going to do in the next 6 months or a year that feels doable, possible, and good? And so with my deck, I decided, okay, I'm not going to seal it today. I'm just going to go to Home Depot. I'm going to buy the stuff and come back to my house. I'm going to sit it on my counter. And I've made a little bit of progress, and it felt incredible. And so the new thing right now, like if I'm talking to someone, and it's like, man, how do I get like my life back into orbit? How do I, get going in the right direction again? It's like I think right now, small steps of progress are king. Small steps, like a little thing. If I take if I move an inch forward today, and then an inch forward tomorrow, because like you said, too much, it overwhelms you, and then you don't do anything. And so I think that we need to be mindful of the moment that we're living in and just the way everyone's feeling. Everyone kind of feels a little bit burned out probably. And so I think small steps of progress are king right now. And if anything, I would say maybe it's even unwise to think too far down the road. I think there will come a time for that, but I don't think that this is that time. So I think small steps of progress are king.
Well, let me ask you this, because you're talking about being mindful of the moment, and we talked about how we all feel, and we do all kind of feel a heaviness or a tiredness, a burnt outness. I mean, I want to press into that, and we may not be able to answer it on this podcast, but do you think like that's a real feeling, or do you think like, or is that a feeling, or is like we really are living in difficult times, you know. And I know probably like our grandfathers could be like, man, back in my day, you know, it was this and that. But like it does feel like things are a little bit harder now. And so you talk about small steps, like those are the old big steps, you know?
No, I think we are. And one thing for me, just in all transparency, I mean, I know someone might be listening to this, and, you know, I feel like everything happened in the world and then what's happened in our family, we have like our own different crisis. So maybe in some ways I see it different. You know, I do think most people I talk to, no one I talk to is like, man, things are awesome. I'm crushing it. I feel great. Like everyone kind of hates their job, kind of doesn't know what to do, doesn't know what the future hold. Like, it's like even people's like, well, I'm going to move or I'm not going to move. I don't know what to do, you know? But I just thought the other day that I think we are in unique moments. Once again, I don't know if it's worse than it was for, you know, World War II, or probably that was worse. But I know that it's unique in our moment because I lived through 2015. I lived through 2016. I lived through 2017. I lived through 2000. I remember those times. And so I think that at the very least, we can say in the past, I've been alive for 33 years. I do think that we are in a unique moment of chaos, because I was like, dude, like everything has been chaotic. It's like the pandemic, it's the racial stuff, it's all these social issues. I mean, it's everything is having its moment. And it's like 1 minute it's all about the racial stuff, and the next minute it's all about abortion, and the next minute it's all about this issue or the shooting, or I mean, dude, it's like everything is like coping or going haywire as a result of kind of what has happened. Like stability is gone, and so people are acting out in different ways. And also, like, speaking of, it is like, I listened to a podcast yesterday, and the guy basically said, and he's probably the most informed guy in church stuff that I listen to. He said, almost no churches are growing right now. You know, every church is at 70%. I have mentors who I know are incredible men of God, know exactly what to do. And they're like, yeah, our church is half of what it used to be. And I'm like, I've never heard that before, you know? So I think we are in unique times, but I think that's what makes this conversation even more important, because, you know, we are called to live through these times. Now, I do think when you look at biblical times, it's not, you know, like I had this thought yesterday. She was like, man, everyone in the Bible, their life was a lot different than they thought it was going to be, and hard, but God used it. And so that is the hope. It's like Peter's life did not go like he thought it was going to go. Paul's life didn't go. Abraham's life, Moses, David didn't think he was going to be the king, you know? Yep. So once again, I think in all of it though, it's like a lot's going on, but I do believe God is using it. And I know we've even been talking about, like, I think there is a good chance some kind of revival comes out of this. It might just not happen as quick as we thought. We thought like a month into COVID there's going to be a revival, and like online church was going to spark a revival. And we think, well, that didn't happen then, so it's not going to happen. But no, it's like, you know, we're just the microwave generation. And so it might take 3 years. You know, there might need to be 3 years where all the chaos permeates and then something new comes out of it. But my opinion is, we're living through a pretty crazy moment. So I got one more thought, but anything else you want to say?
No, you know, I know we're going to talk in a moment, just kind of the importance of kind of hearing God's voice and kind of how do you navigate the path forward. But just going back a little bit to kind of this moment and like just recognizing the moment, I did have a verse that was just kind of on my heart. And it may sound like apocalyptic and negative, but hear me out. It's 1 Peter 4:7-8. And it says, the end of all things is near, therefore be alert and of sober mind, so that you may pray, and above all love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. Yeah. And I don't know, it's just almost like Peter, even, you know, as he writes this in first century, he kind of understands that, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, we are kind of in this like final moment of history in which Christ has come, and in which we are looking forward to his return. And so it's almost like we kind of lived pre-pandemic, and I put myself in this just like feeling like we're going to live forever, everything's going to be good forever and positive forever, and we did enjoy some relative peace, but now we're kind of, like you said, like more in line with our biblical brothers and sisters. And so I just love that, and just his exhortation, you know, where like it feels like the world's in chaos, and in some ways it actually is. Therefore, be sober-minded in prayer, and then also just loving others. And I love that. Love others because it covers a multitude of sins, and who doesn't need that in our culture, you know? And so it's just like being mindful of the moment you're in and responding to that in like a biblical and godly way. Yeah,
no, I think we need to hear that encouragement that, like, if you're aware of what's happening and you're responding faithfully, like it's going to work out. Yeah. It is going to be okay. And we've got a lot of testaments of that in our life, and ways we've seen that. And yeah, like my final like kind of encouragement, exhortation would be to make space to hear God's voice. I think that is I remember, it's funny, if I could ask you one more question, maybe we'll finish with this actually. I was like, what is it like to go on a sabbatical, like you went on for 4 or 5 weeks, and to come back into this world, And I had something similar kind of last year, but I remember when I went on mine about a year ago, one of my things I wrote down was I was surprised at how easy it was to reconnect with God. Like it didn't take 2 months. I was like a couple of days in, just one little getaway, couple times on a nice porch with a nice view and the Bible open in my journal. I was like, oh God, I hear you. There you are. And I was just surprised. I thought I was going to have to work more for it. And I'm continuing to experience that where I feel like maybe it's harder to kind of get to those places where I really feel like I'm like able to hear God's voice. But when I do, I hear it a lot more frequently than maybe even ways I used to on a personal level. And so I think making space to hear God's voice, I went, I preached at a different church this past Sunday, and then it was in Galveston. So afterwards I was like, well, I'm in Galveston. I'll go to the beach for a little bit, had a book, journal, a beach by myself, even the beach of Galveston, which isn't that awesome, but it's at least a beach. I mean, I came back feeling so connected to God, re-energized. I mean, I'm doing a getaway next week by myself for a couple of days. I'm going to the hill country by myself, got a little space I rented out, and I am making that space, and I feel like God speaks. And when I do get to those places of really deep prayer, it's like I've had some of the most incredible prayer moments of my life in the past 6 months. They've been less common, but more impactful when they've happened. And so I think, but you have to create that space because social media, the internet, like I've heard it said, like I heard Matt Chandler say this, no one's going to give that to you.
Yep.
No one's going to come up to you and be like, hey man, like, I'm going to go get time with Jesus. I don't no, people have other agendas for you and we have other agendas for ourselves. And so you've got to make that space. But when you do, I really believe that God speaks. And so I think the battle isn't really in hearing God. It's making space to hear God.
Absolutely, man. I felt the same way on my sabbatical. It was so easy to connect with God early on, and I noticed how easy it was to begin to feel disconnected with God even coming back. I thought I was going to supercharge the rest of my year, but I found that I was just jumping back into a raging river of busyness, and I know this is super cheesy, but there's a commercial with like Tom Brady. He's the football player, right? He's always going to retire. It's the thing where basically in the commercial, he's like, wait, I don't need to retire. I just need a vacation. Is basically like the thesis of the commercial. And I thought about that in terms of just like getting away with God, where like we all feel overwhelmed all the stuff and we want to make these like big moves. And maybe that is the right case. But like in reality, it's just like, no, I'm just not spending time with God because he's the one who kind of equalizes like my life,
And I want to say this too. And I swear this might sound cynical, but it is not cynical. Like when you came back from like sabbatical and I was talking to you, I was like, man, like I want what this guy has. Like, man, he met with the divine. Like I could, it's like your face was shining, like the amount of transfiguration and half of me was like, man, I want that. Like this could be our life. This could be like how we do it. And half of me was like, this dude's about to just get like Mack trucked, like just blown over by like everything we've all been holding back, this whole time, And it's like, oh, we can reach out to you now. Like we can email and text you now, And so, but I think going back to what we said is like, I think it's like on one hand you shouldn't expect your normal life to be like a sabbatical. It's different for a reason. That's what I experienced. Is like, it doesn't mean that the sabbatical didn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that life is too crazy now. It's just like, when you're not having to work and having some solo trips and maybe not around the kid as much, there's going to be a little bit more of like that kind of time to connect with God and connect with yourself. And so, but anyway, man, I think it's funny. And that's why we'll do more of those in the future, and we'll take some time off or Sundays out or whatever. But all in all, I do think that like, maybe even like that big idea is like, for anyone listening to this, I think the hope of this is like, we're just sharing kind of rapid fire thoughts, like things that are going through our mind. And maybe there's a thing or two that kind of just like hits you that you want to think about. But the big idea is we don't have to let the chaos around us create chaos within us. And I think that Jesus is the greatest example of that chaos all around him. But he was never frazzled. And so it's like being able to live your life and like being able to kind of keep that perspective of like, like even we talk about here at the church, like we take everything on ourselves and we got to fix everything. But it's like, no, we're two dudes and we want to serve this place. We want to help where we can. And there's things to do and the world is the way it is. And, we're going to offer what we can offer and we're going to enjoy the ride. So I think the big thing is whatever it looks like for you, whoever's listening to this or watching this is, man, you like find the peace because it's there in the Lord.
Yeah. And kind of my final exhortation is similar. It's just like, take a moment to take stock of the moment you're in, and think about the season you're in and don't rely on old habits or patterns to carry you through a current season, and I think you talked about just that need for space. And so for all of us, I think we kind of knew in the past that probably good to get in our Bible and spend time with God, but it kind of felt optional. But now like it doesn't feel optional, and I think we're seeing the effects of people's lives who aren't spending those moments of equilibrium. It's just throwing them out of orbit in the world, and we want to be rooted and tethered to Christ. And the way we do that is by making space for him. So
love it.
It's good, man. All right. Well, hey guys, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.